The night is quiet. There is no marching, no shouting, no sound of metal striking metal. Only the soft wind moving through tall grass and the distant creak of wood as something shifts slowly in the dark. Far from the noise of battle, soldiers sit in stillness. It may seem unusual to imagine soldiers like this, without urgency, without danger, without purpose that demands speed. But most of their lives were not spent in war. Most of their lives were spent waiting, waiting for orders, waiting for news, waiting for something to happen. And in that waiting, life continued in quiet and ordinary ways. If you were to walk into a military camp during one of these long stretches of peace, you might not even recognize it at first. There would be no chaos. Instead, you would find small fires burning low, cooking pots gently steaming, and men moving slowly through their routines. Some would be sitting on wooden crates, carefully repairing their boots. Others might be cleaning their weapons, not out of urgency, but out of habit. The slow, repeated motion of cloth over metal becomes almost meditative. There is comfort in routine, even for soldiers, especially for soldiers, because routine fills the long, empty hours. In ancient times, soldiers often lived together in simple camps or forts. These places were not always temporary. Many became semi-permanent homes, built with care and patience. Walls were raised, roofs were repaired, paths were worn into the ground by countless footsteps. Over time, these places began to feel less like camps and more like small, quiet villages. In a Roman fort, for example, the day began early. Before the sun had fully risen, a horn might sound softly across the camp. Not loudly, not urgently, just enough to stir the men from sleep. They would rise slowly, stretching in the cool morning air. The ground beneath them might still hold the chill of the night. Their first tasks were simple: checking their gear, straightening their sleeping spaces, making sure everything was in order. Discipline did not disappear during peace. It simply became quieter. Breakfast was often plain: bread, perhaps a little cheese, sometimes porridge. Food that was steady and reliable. Food that did not change much from day to day. And after eating, the long hours of the day began to unfold. Some soldiers trained, not intensely, not with the urgency of preparing for immediate battle, but gently, steadily. They practiced formations, they walked in lines, they lifted shields and set them down again. The rhythm of it was slow, repetitive, almost calming. Others were given different duties. A soldier might spend the entire morning carrying water from a nearby stream. Another might be assigned to repair a section of wall that had begun to crumble. These tasks were not glorious. They were not remembered in stories, but they filled the time. And time, in these quiet periods, was something that needed to be filled. As the sun rose higher, the camp would grow warmer. The sounds of activity would soften, voices low, footsteps steady. No one rushed. There was no need. In these moments, soldiers became something more than warriors. They became builders, workers, caretakers of their own small world. And sometimes, when the work was done, they rested, sitting in the shade, leaning against wooden posts, looking out across the land beyond the camp. It might be fields or forests or open hills stretching far into the distance, places that were calm, places that did not feel like war. And in these quiet views, the mind could wander, back home, to familiar places, to people who were far away. Because even in times of peace, soldiers carried something heavy. Not weapons, not armor, but distance. Distance from home. Distance from the life they once knew. And so, in the stillness, they remembered. Not loudly, not with sadness that showed on the surface, but quietly, like a thought that drifts in and out, like the wind. As the day slowly moved forward, the camp remained steady. Nothing sudden, nothing sharp, only the soft passing of time and the quiet lives of soldiers who, for now, were not at war.
By the time the sun reaches its highest point in the sky, the pace of the camp becomes even slower. Heat settles gently over everything. The ground warms, the air becomes still, and movement, once steady in the morning, begins to soften into something more relaxed. Many soldiers pause their work during this time, not out of laziness, but because the day itself seems to ask for rest. They sit in small groups, often in the shade of simple wooden structures or beneath cloth coverings stretched between posts. Some remove parts of their armor. The weight of it is not needed now. Metal plates and leather straps are set aside carefully, placed in neat piles or hung where they can cool. Without armor, they look different, less like figures of war, more like ordinary men. Their clothing is simple, worn in places, soft from long use. There is something very human in these moments, something easy. Food returns again, but not in a hurried way. Midday meals are small, sometimes just bread dipped in water or wine, maybe a piece of dried meat. Nothing elaborate, but enough, always enough. And as they eat, conversations drift quietly through the air. Not loud discussions, not arguments, just simple words, stories repeated many times, memories shared slowly. Sometimes the same story is told again and again, and no one minds, because the telling is not about newness, it is about familiarity, about hearing something known, something steady. A soldier might speak of his village. Another might describe a river he once crossed as a child. These are not important stories in the larger sense, but they are important here, in this quiet place, far from home. Laughter, when it comes, is soft, short, never too loud. It fades quickly, returning to silence. After eating, some men lie down, not deeply asleep, just resting, eyes closed, listening to the quiet sounds around them, a bird somewhere nearby, the shifting of fabric in the breeze, the distant clink of metal as someone continues their work. Others remain awake, but still, watching, thinking, or simply passing time without thought at all, because sometimes the absence of thought is its own kind of rest. In many camps, soldiers also practiced small crafts during these long hours. One might carve wood, slowly shaping a piece into something simple, a handle, a small figure, or even just smoothing its surface again and again. Another might mend clothing, thread moving in and out of fabric with quiet precision. These tasks required patience, and patience was something soldiers learned well, not through teaching, but through time. So much time. Time that stretched long and wide, especially when nothing urgent was happening. There were also moments of duty. Even in peace, someone always watched. Guards stood at the edges of the camp. Their presence was calm, not tense. They looked out across the land with steady eyes, not expecting danger, but ready in their own quiet way. Shifts changed slowly, no rush, each soldier taking his place when the time came and stepping away when it was done. Everything moved like this, slow, predictable, gentle. As the afternoon continued, shadows began to lengthen, the heat softened, the air began to move again, and with it, the camp slowly came back to life. Work resumed, but lightly, no urgency, just small tasks being finished, a rope tied, a tool put away, a final check of something already checked before. There is a kind of peace in repetition, and soldiers, perhaps more than most, understood that, because repetition meant stability, and stability meant safety, even if only for a little while.
As the day begins to lean toward evening, the light changes. It becomes softer, golden. Long shadows stretch across the ground, reaching quietly between tents and wooden structures.
The air cools slowly, almost gently, and the camp, which had rested in the warmth of the afternoon, begins to stir again, but not with urgency, with calm purpose. This is a different kind of activity, slower than the morning, more thoughtful. Fires are prepared, not large, bright fires, but small ones, carefully built, wood placed with quiet attention. A spark, then a flame, then a steady glow. The smell of smoke drifts softly through the camp. It mixes with the scent of earth and worn fabric and simple food. This is the time for the evening meal, and unlike the midday meal, this one carries a feeling of closure, of something ending, of the day slowly coming to rest. Cooking is simple. A pot placed over the fire, water heated, grain added, maybe vegetables if they are available, sometimes meat, though not always. The sound of boiling is soft, gentle bubbles rising and breaking, a steady rhythm. And around these fires, soldiers gather again, closer now. The space feels smaller, more contained, more personal. Light from the flames flickers across faces, across hands, across the ground. It is not bright enough to show everything, only enough to suggest shapes, to soften edges. Voices, too, are softer now, lower, more spaced out. There is no need to fill the silence, because the silence itself feels comfortable. Some men eat quietly, focused only on the warmth of the food and the slow movement of their hands. Others speak in low tones, words that drift, then disappear. Nothing forced, nothing held too tightly. After eating, there is time. There is always time. And in this part of the day, time feels even slower. Some soldiers look up at the sky, watching as the light fades, watching as the first stars begin to appear, one by one, quietly, without announcement. For many, this is a familiar sight, a constant presence. No matter where they are stationed, no matter how far from home, the sky remains the same, and there is comfort in that. A soldier might lean back slightly, resting his weight on his hands, breathing slowly, letting the day settle inside him. Another might continue working on something small, a piece of cloth, a tool, a simple object that does not need to be finished quickly, because nothing needs to be finished quickly here, not tonight, not in this moment. As darkness deepens, the camp becomes quieter still. Some fires burn low, others are gently put out, one by one, leaving only faint glows and the occasional flicker. The sounds fade, footsteps become less frequent, voices disappear, and what remains is a kind of stillness that feels complete, not empty, but full in its own quiet way. Soldiers return to their sleeping spaces, simple places, nothing elaborate, a blanket, a mat, a place they have used many times before. They lie down slowly, adjusting, settling, letting their bodies rest after another day that asked very little, yet still passed in its own steady way. And as they close their eyes, there is no fear pressing in, no immediate danger, only the soft presence of night, the distant sounds of nature, and the quiet understanding that tomorrow will likely be the same, slow, gentle, unchanging. And in that sameness, there is a strange kind of peace, a peace that exists only in the long spaces between war.
The night settles fully now. Darkness stretches across the land, covering the camp in a soft and even shadow. The last small fires have faded into glowing embers, and the air has cooled enough that breath feels calm and steady. Most soldiers are asleep. Their breathing is slow, even, a quiet rhythm shared across the camp. But not everyone sleeps at the same time. There are always a few who remain awake.
Night watch is one of the oldest duties a soldier can have. It does not disappear when war is far away. It simply becomes quieter, like everything else. A guard stands near the edge of the camp. He does not move much. There is no reason to. His eyes adjust to the darkness, learning the shapes of trees, the outline of distant hills, the faint line where land meets sky. He listens more than he looks. The soft sound of wind, the occasional movement of leaves, sometimes the distant call of an animal. These sounds come and go, repeating in gentle patterns, and over time they become familiar, comforting even. The guard shifts his weight slowly from one foot to the other, not out of impatience, but simply to remain awake, to remain present. There is no fear pressing on him, no sense that something will suddenly appear from the darkness, but the duty remains, and so he stands. Time moves differently at night. It stretches. Each moment feels a little longer than the one before, and in that length, thoughts begin to drift. A soldier on watch might think of home, of a quiet room, of a familiar path, of voices he once heard every day. These memories do not come sharply. They come softly, like distant echoes. He does not hold on to them too tightly. He simply lets them pass through his mind, one after another. Sometimes another guard walks by. Their steps are quiet, measured. They nod to each other, no words needed, just a simple acknowledgement that they are both there, both awake, in a world that is mostly asleep. Hours pass in this gentle way. The sky slowly shifts. Stars move across it, almost too slowly to notice. And then, very gradually, something changes. Not suddenly, not all at once, but gently. The darkness begins to thin. At first it is barely visible, a faint light along the horizon, a suggestion rather than a clear sign. The guard notices it, even if he does not think about it directly. It is part of the rhythm he has come to understand. Night always gives way to morning. Always. And as that first light grows, the camp begins to stir once more. Not loudly, not quickly, but slowly, just as it did the day before, and the day before that. Morning returns in a quiet and familiar way. The first light spreads softly across the ground, touching the edges of tents and the tops of wooden posts. The air is cool again, carrying a faint freshness that only exists at the very start of the day. One by one, soldiers begin to wake. There is no sudden movement, no rush to stand, just small signs of life returning. A shift of a blanket, a slow stretch of arms, a quiet breath taken in the cool air. Some sit up and remain still for a moment, as if letting the day arrive fully before stepping into it. Others rise more quickly, though still without urgency. They know what the day will bring, or at least they know what it will likely bring. Routine has a way of shaping expectation, and expectation, when it is gentle and predictable, can feel comforting. The first tasks begin again, not because they must be done immediately, but because they are always done. A soldier folds his blanket carefully. Another brushes dust from his clothing. Someone checks a piece of equipment, running his hand along its surface as if reacquainting himself with it. These actions are quiet, repetitive, familiar. Nearby, a small fire is started, then another. The faint smell of smoke rises once again, just as it did the day before. Breakfast is prepared slowly. There is no hurry. The same foods appear: bread, grain, water. Sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less, but always simple, always steady. As they eat, the camp remains calm. there is still a softness in the air, a quiet that has not yet been fully replaced by the sounds of the day. Some soldiers speak in low voices, others eat in silence. Neither feels strange. Both belong here. After the meal, the camp begins to organize itself, not in a strict or hurried way, but in a natural one. People move toward the tasks they know are theirs, almost without needing to think about it. Training resumes for some. Again, not intense, not driven by urgency, but steady. They lift shields, they walk in formation, they repeat movements they have done many times before. The rhythm is slow, predictable, almost like a quiet form of exercise, more about maintaining the body than preparing for immediate conflict. Elsewhere, work continues. A group repairs part of a structure. Wood is lifted, fitted into place, secured. Each action done with care, but without pressure. Another soldier sharpens a blade. The sound is soft, a gentle scrape repeated again and again. It is not a sound of violence, not here, not now. It is simply a task, a way to pass time while keeping something useful in good condition. As the sun rises higher, the light becomes warmer. The camp becomes more active, but never loud. There is movement, but it flows rather than rushes. Everything feels connected, each task blending into the next, each moment leading gently into another. And so the day begins again, not as something new, but as something familiar, something expected, something steady.
There are days when nothing changes at all. Days that pass so quietly that they seem to leave almost no mark behind. For soldiers, these days are not unusual. They are, in fact, the most common. And within them, life takes on a very particular shape. It becomes simple, almost minimal. A soldier wakes, he eats, he works, he rests, he repeats. There is no need to think far ahead, no need to plan beyond the next task, the next meal, the next moment of rest. This way of living can feel narrow from the outside, but from within it has a certain calm, because everything is known, everything is expected, and when life is expected, it becomes easier to move through it without resistance. In the late morning, when the sun has fully risen, but the heat has not yet settled too deeply, there is often a quiet sense of balance in the camp. Tasks are underway, but they are not heavy. Conversations happen, but they are not demanding. A soldier might carry a bundle of wood from one place to another. The weight is not too much, the distance is not too far. Each step is steady, measured. He does not rush. There is no reason to. Another might sit near the entrance of a tent, carefully stitching a tear in a piece of cloth. The thread moves slowly through the fabric. In, out, in, out. The pattern repeats. It requires attention, but not strain. And in that gentle focus, time passes almost unnoticed. Nearby, two soldiers speak quietly. Their words are spaced out with pauses between them, not because they have nothing to say, but because there is no need to say everything quickly. The pauses are part of the conversation, part of the rhythm. Sometimes they simply sit together without speaking at all, looking out at the same view, sharing the same silence, and that too is enough. In these moments, soldiers are not defined by war. They are not defined by conflict. They are simply people living within a structure that keeps them together, a shared space, a shared routine, a shared stillness. As midday approaches again, the air grows warmer, the light becomes stronger, and slowly, almost without noticing, the camp begins to ease into another period of rest, the same as before, the same as yesterday, and likely the same as tomorrow. Time does not rush forward here. It moves in circles, gentle, repeated circles, each day echoing the one before it,
each moment blending into the next. And within that repetition, something quiet and steady continues to exist. A life without urgency, a life without sudden change, a life that for now remains untouched by war.
The middle of the day returns again, carrying with it that same quiet warmth. The sun stands high above the camp, steady and unhurried, as if it too has nowhere else to be. Light falls evenly across everything: the worn paths, the wooden beams, the simple fabric of tents that move just slightly in the soft air. This is the hour when movement becomes slower. Not because anyone has been told to slow down, but because the body understands the rhythm of the day. Soldiers find places to sit. Some choose the shade of a wall. Others rest beside stacked supplies or lean against posts that have been touched by many hands over many days. There is a shared understanding in these moments. Work will continue later. For now, there is space to pause. A soldier sits with his back against a wooden support beam, his legs stretched out in front of him. His boots are dusty, marked by the slow passing of many quiet days. He removes one boot and gently shakes out a bit of dirt that is gathered inside. It is a small action, unimportant in the larger story of history, but here it matters, because it fills a moment, and moments, one after another, become the shape of life. Nearby, another soldier holds a small cup in both hands. The liquid inside is simple, water, perhaps lightly flavored, nothing strong. He drinks slowly, not out of thirst alone, but out of habit. Each movement is measured, nothing wasted, nothing rushed. In another part of the camp, a few men sit together, working with their hands. One carefully braids a length of rope, his fingers moving in a steady pattern he no longer needs to think about. Another smooths the surface of a wooden tool handle, rubbing it again and again with a piece of cloth. These tasks are quiet, repetitive, almost invisible if you were not looking closely, and yet they are everywhere. They exist in every corner of the camp. They are the background of daily life, a soft layer beneath everything else. The conversations that rise during this time are even softer than before. Words come slowly, sometimes separated by long pauses. No one feels the need to fill the silence. Silence is not empty here. It is shared, comfortable, a place where thoughts can drift without interruption. One soldier begins to speak about a place he once knew, not in great detail, just a few simple images: a road lined with trees, a small house, the way the light looked in the early morning. He does not describe everything. He does not need to. The others listen quietly, not asking questions, not interrupting. They let the story exist as it is, incomplete, gentle. And then, when it fades, they return to stillness. As the afternoon continues, the heat begins to soften just slightly. A breeze moves through the camp, not strong, just enough to shift the air, to bring a sense of change. Soldiers begin to stir again, slowly, almost without noticing. A man stands, stretching his arms above his head. Another sets aside his work and brushes dust from his hands. These small movements signal the return to activity, but even now, there is no urgency. Tasks resume in the same quiet way they always do. A section of fencing is checked and adjusted. Supplies are counted again, even though they were counted before. A path is cleared of small debris, not because it must be perfect, but because there is time to make it so. And so the day continues, not as something separate, but as part of a long, unbroken flow, one moment leading gently into the next. In the quieter seasons of a soldier's life, When no war calls them forward, time stretches even further. Days are not marked by events, they are marked by repetition, by the slow and steady return of the same patterns. Morning, work, rest, evening, night, and then again. Over time, this repetition begins to shape not just the day, but the mind. A soldier learns to notice small things, things that might otherwise go unseen. The way the light changes across a wall as the sun moves. The faint differences in the sound of footsteps on dry ground versus damp earth. The subtle shift in air before a change in weather. These details become part of daily awareness, because when nothing dramatic is happening, the quiet details begin to matter more. A soldier walking along the edge of the camp might pause for a moment, looking down at the ground, not because something is wrong, but because something is there, a pattern in the dirt, marks left by wheels or footsteps. He studies it briefly, then moves on. There is no deeper reason, just a moment of attention. Elsewhere, a group of soldiers gathers near a shaded area. They sit close, not out of necessity, but out of habit. Being near others brings a quiet comfort, even when no one is speaking. One of them holds a small object, perhaps a coin, perhaps something carved from wood. He turns it slowly in his fingers, over and over. The motion is steady, almost absent-minded, but also intentional in its own way. It gives the hands something to do, and sometimes that is enough. Food continues to be prepared at regular times. The routine of eating is one of the strongest anchors in the day. It breaks time into gentle sections, before and after. The meals themselves do not change much, but the act of gathering, of sitting, of sharing space, it creates a quiet structure, one that does not need to be explained. As afternoon begins to drift toward evening once again, the camp carries a familiar feeling. Not boredom, not quite, but something close to stillness, a sense that nothing is expected to happen. And that is not troubling, it is simply the way things are. In this space, without war, soldiers live in a kind of pause, not a complete stop, but a slowing, a stretching of time that allows each small moment to exist fully before it fades. And as the light softens again, just as it did the day before, the camp prepares for another quiet evening. Evening arrives gently, like a familiar presence returning once more. The sky begins to change its color, shifting from bright to soft, from warm to muted. The edges of clouds, if there are any, catch the last light of the sun and hold it for a moment before letting it go. In the camp, the transition is almost unnoticeable. There is no signal, no command, just a gradual shift in movement and sound. Soldiers begin to gather near the places where fires will be lit. Wood is arranged carefully, just as it was before. Hands move with quiet certainty, no wasted motion. A spark is struck, a flame appears, small at first, then steady. The fires are not large, they do not need to be. They are enough to warm the food, enough to give light, enough to create a place for people to sit together, and that is all that is needed. The smell of cooking rises again, familiar, comforting. It drifts slowly through the camp, blending with the coolness of the evening air. A soldier stirs a pot with a simple wooden tool. The motion is slow, circular, repeated again and again. He does not rush. There is no reason to hurry the process. Around him, others sit quietly, watching, waiting. Some speak in low voices, others remain silent. Both feel natural, both belong. When the food is ready, it is shared without ceremony. Each person takes what is given, no more, no less. The act of eating is calm,
measured, a continuation of the day's slow rhythm. After the meal, there is time again, time that stretches gently into the evening. A soldier leans back, looking up at the sky. The first stars begin to appear, just as they always do, one by one, quietly, without drawing attention to themselves. He watches them for a while, not counting, not naming, just observing. Nearby, another soldier runs his hand along the surface of a worn object, perhaps the handle of a tool, perhaps the edge of a piece of equipment. His fingers trace the same path over and over, a simple motion, grounding, steady. There are no loud sounds now, no sudden movements. The camp has settled into its quietest state, a place where each person exists in their own small space while still being part of something shared. As darkness deepens, the fires begin to fade once more. Some are left to burn low, others are gently extinguished. The light they gave slowly disappears, leaving behind only the faint glow of embers. And then even those begin to dim, one by one, until the camp is held again by the soft presence of night. Soldiers return to their places of rest. Their movements are slow, almost automatic. They have done this many times before. They lie down, adjust their blankets, close their eyes. There is no tension, no anticipation, only the quiet understanding that another day has passed, a day that asked little, a day that gave little, but a day that existed fully in its own slow and steady way. And as sleep comes, it comes gently, like everything else.
The night holds everything in a soft, steady quiet. There is no clear beginning to it, and no sharp edge where it truly settles. It simply deepens, slowly and without effort, until the camp is wrapped in darkness once more. Most of the soldiers sleep without interruption. Their bodies have grown used to this rhythm. Days that move slowly, nights that pass without urgency. Sleep comes easier in such a life, not because it is perfect, but because it is predictable, and predictability has its own kind of comfort. A few small sounds remain: the shifting of someone turning in their sleep, the faint brushing of fabric, the low crackle of a fire that has not yet gone out completely. These sounds are scattered, quiet, and far apart. They do not disturb the stillness. They belong to it. Along the outer edges of the camp, the night watch continues. A soldier stands with a relaxed posture, his shoulders low, his breathing even. He looks outward, but not with tension. There is nothing in the darkness that feels threatening, only distance, only space, only the quiet presence of land stretching far beyond what can be seen. Sometimes he takes a few steps, not far, just enough to keep his body from becoming too still. The ground beneath his feet feels cool now, holding the memory of the sun, but no longer its warmth. He pauses again, listens. Nothing changes. And in that unchanging silence, time passes almost unnoticed. The stars above remain steady. They move slowly, in patterns too gradual to follow in a single glance. If he watches long enough, he may notice one shifting slightly. But even that movement feels calm, unhurried, like everything else. There are moments in the depth of night when the world feels very large, larger than during the day. The darkness hides the boundaries. It softens edges, blurs distance. A soldier standing alone might feel this without fully thinking about it. A quiet awareness, a sense of space that stretches beyond him. But it does not bring fear, not here, not now.
because the camp, though quiet, is still there behind him, filled with others, sleeping, breathing, sharing the same stillness. And so he stands, not guarding against something, but simply holding his place in the quiet order of things. As the night moves forward, slowly, steadily, the same gentle shift begins again. A faint change in the sky, a soft thinning of darkness. Morning once again begins its quiet return. The first signs of morning are almost invisible. A slight lifting of the darkness, a faint gray tone along the horizon. It does not demand attention, it simply arrives. The guard on duty notices it first, not because he is watching for it, but because he has seen it many times before. He understands its rhythm without needing to think about it. Night fades, morning follows, always. As the light grows, the shapes of the camp slowly return. At first, they are only outlines, soft edges. Then, gradually, details begin to appear. Wood grain, fabric folds, the uneven ground beneath everything. The camp wakes in the same way it always does, quietly, without announcement. A soldier stirs, another shifts. Someone sits up, still half within sleep. There is no rush to stand, no immediate demand, just the slow return of awareness. The air is cool again, fresh in a way that only exists at this hour. It carries a faint stillness, as if the day has not yet fully begun. A man rubs his hands together, feeling the slight chill. Another pulls his blanket aside and sets it neatly in place. These actions are small, habitual, done without thought. Nearby, a fire is started once more. A thin line of smoke rises, barely visible at first, then clearer as the flame takes hold. The smell returns, familiar, soft, part of the rhythm that shapes each day. Breakfast is prepared just as it was before. No variation, no surprise. And that is not a problem, because in this life, consistency is not something to escape, it is something to rely on. As the soldiers eat, the camp begins to take on a little more movement, still quiet, still calm, but active in a gentle way. A few voices speak, low, measured. Some men remain silent, listening, or simply existing within the shared space. After the meal, the pattern continues. Tasks begin again, each person moving toward what they already know needs to be done. No instructions are shouted, no urgency fills the air, because everything is already understood. A soldier lifts a tool and carries it to where it belongs. Another checks a section of the camp's boundary, not because it has changed, but because it is part of his routine. The repetition does not feel heavy. It does not feel like a burden. Instead, it creates a kind of steady ground beneath everything, a sense that nothing is out of place, that everything continues as it should. And so, morning becomes day, slowly, naturally, without resistance.
As the day settles into its middle hours once again, the feeling of time becomes softer, less defined. Moments do not stand apart from one another. They blend, one into the next, until it is difficult to say exactly when one part of the day ends and another begins. For the soldiers, this is normal. They do not measure time closely. They do not count each hour. Instead, they move with the light, with the temperature, with the quiet signals of the world around them. A soldier walks along a familiar path within the camp. His steps follow a route he has taken many times before. The ground is slightly uneven in places, worn down by repeated use. He does not need to look down. His body already knows where to step. In his hands, he carries something simple, a piece of equipment, a small bundle, nothing heavy, nothing urgent.
He moves at an even pace, not fast, not slow, just steady. Nearby, another soldier kneels beside a wooden structure. He adjusts something small, a loose piece, a connection that needs to be tightened. His hands work carefully, but without strain. He has done this kind of work many times. There is no difficulty in it, only repetition. And repetition, over time, becomes its own kind of ease. In another part of the camp, two men sit facing the open land beyond. They are not speaking, they are not working, they are simply sitting, watching. The land stretches outward, quiet and unchanged. No movement in the distance, no signs of anything approaching, just stillness. This stillness does not feel empty. It feels complete, as if nothing is missing, as if nothing needs to be added. A breeze moves through the area, light and brief. It touches the edges of clothing. It shifts loose strands of hair. Then it passes, leaving the air calm once more. These small changes are enough to mark the passage of time, a shift in light, a change in temperature, the movement of air. There is no need for more. As midday approaches, the camp begins to slow again, not suddenly, but gradually. Work becomes lighter, movements become fewer, voices soften. The familiar pattern returns. Rest will come, then activity again, then evening, then night, each part following the other without interruption, without surprise. And within this steady cycle, soldiers continue their lives, not as figures of battle, not as part of great events, but as people moving quietly through time, filling each day with small actions, small thoughts, small moments that together form something steady, something calm, something that continues day after day in the long and peaceful space where there is no war. The afternoon settles in gently, like a familiar weight that no one minds carrying. The sun remains high, though it has begun its slow movement toward the horizon. The light is steady, warm but no longer sharp. It rests across the camp in a quiet, even way, touching every surface without urgency. This is the hour when time feels the longest. Not in a heavy way, but in a stretched, open way. There is space in it, space between actions, space between thoughts. Soldiers move through this space carefully, though not intentionally so. Their movements simply match the pace of the day. A man sits near a stack of supplies, his back slightly bent forward, his hands resting loosely in his lap. For a while, he does nothing at all. He is not waiting. He is not thinking about what comes next. He is simply present. Moments like this are common. They are not filled with purpose, but they are not empty either. They are quiet places in time where nothing needs to happen. Nearby, another soldier slowly wraps a length of cloth around his hand. The motion is slow, deliberate, repeated. He smooths it once, then again, making sure it sits comfortably. There is no urgency in preparation, only a sense of maintaining what already exists. Further along, a few men continue light work. A wooden beam is lifted slightly, adjusted, then set back into place. A tool is cleaned with a piece of cloth, the same motion repeated over and over. These actions might seem unnecessary from the outside, but within the camp they are part of the rhythm, part of the way time is shaped and passed. There is a kind of quiet care in everything, not perfection, not precision beyond need, but a steady attention, a way of keeping things in order, even when nothing demands it. As the hours move forward, the heat begins to ease. The air changes slowly. A faint breeze returns, brushing gently across the ground and between the structures. Soldiers begin to notice this shift without speaking of it. A man straightens slightly where he sits. Another stands and stretches his back. The smallest changes mark the passing of the day. And gradually, almost without realizing it, the camp begins to wake again from its afternoon stillness. Not all at once, but piece by piece. One soldier rises and walks toward a task he had set aside earlier. Another gathers a few items and carries them across the camp. The movement returns, but it remains soft, unforced. Everything continues as it has before, in a long, unbroken flow.
In these long stretches without war, soldiers become deeply familiar with their surroundings, not just in a general way, but in a quiet, detailed way. They begin to notice things that rarely change: the slight tilt of a post, the worn edge of a path where many feet have passed, the way a certain piece of fabric moves differently in the wind compared to another. These details become part of their daily awareness, not because they are important, but because they are always there. A soldier walking through the camp might reach out and touch a wooden surface as he passes, not for any reason, just the light brush of his hand along something familiar. The texture is known, rough in some places, smooth in others. It does not surprise him, and in that lack of surprise, there is comfort. Elsewhere, a small group sits together in quiet conversation. Their words are few, spaced apart, sometimes interrupted by silence that no one feels the need to fill. They speak about simple things: the way the weather has been, the condition of their tools, small observations that do not carry weight beyond the moment. And yet, these small exchanges create a sense of connection, a shared understanding that they are all part of the same slow-moving life. A soldier might lean back slightly, resting his shoulders against a support beam. His eyes drift across the camp, not searching for anything in particular, just observing, seeing the same familiar sights, the same movements, the same patterns. Nothing feels new, but nothing feels wrong. It is simply as it is. In the distance, beyond the edges of the camp, the land remains still, open, unchanging. No signs of conflict, no signs of movement, just space, wide and quiet. And for now, that is enough. As the afternoon continues, the light begins to soften again. Shadows grow longer, edges become less sharp. The camp, once again, prepares for the slow arrival of evening. Though no one announces it, no one needs to. The body understands. The rhythm continues. Evening returns in its gentle and familiar way. The sun lowers slowly, its light becoming softer, warmer, more forgiving. The sky shifts in color, though no one watches closely enough to see each change as it happens. It simply becomes different, and that is enough. In the camp, movement adjusts once more, not stopping, not starting, but changing. Fires are prepared again, just as they have been many times before. Wood is gathered, arranged, lit. The small flames rise quietly, bringing with them a soft glow that begins to replace the fading light of the day. The smell of smoke returns, subtle, comforting, part of the pattern. A soldier kneels beside one of the fires, adjusting the position of a pot. His movements are careful, but not hurried. He has done this many times. There is no uncertainty in his actions. Around him, others begin to gather, not all at once, but gradually, one by one. They take their places near the warmth, sitting on the ground or on simple supports. The closeness of the group brings a quiet sense of calm. No one speaks loudly, no one needs to. The shared space is enough. Food is prepared and served, simple, unchanging, and yet each meal carries a small sense of completion, a marker that the day is coming to an end. As they eat, the light continues to fade. The edges of the camp soften. Details become less clear. Shapes become more important than specifics.
A soldier lifts his gaze toward the sky. The first stars are already there, faint but steady. They appear without drawing attention, without interruption, just as they always do. After the meal, there is time again, time that feels even quieter now, more settled. A soldier sits with his hands resting loosely on his knees. He does not move, he does not speak. He simply exists in the moment, surrounded by the soft sounds of others doing the same. Another slowly traces a line in the dirt with a small stick, back and forth, back and forth. The motion is simple, endless, calm. The fires burn lower, their light fades, and with it the camp grows quieter. Voices disappear, movements slow, until once again night takes its place fully. The soldiers return to their resting places, each movement familiar, each action repeated from the night before. They lie down, close their eyes, and allow the day to settle behind them. Another day without war. Another day that passed gently, without interruption. And as sleep comes, it comes softly, like everything else. Night returns once more, settling over the camp like a soft, familiar blanket. There is no clear moment when it begins. The light fades, the shadows deepen, and before long, everything is held in a quiet darkness that feels steady and complete. The soldiers rest again. Their bodies, shaped by repetition, move easily into sleep. There is no struggle in it, no resistance, just a gradual release of the day, a letting go. The camp itself seems to breathe more slowly at night. The small movements of the day come to an end. The sounds fade. What remains is a kind of gentle stillness that stretches across every corner of the space. Only a few faint signs of life continue, a soft shift as someone turns in their sleep, the low murmur of breath, the quiet crackle of a fire that has not yet fully faded. These sounds are scattered, distant from one another. They do not interrupt the silence. They belong within it. At the edge of the camp, a guard stands once again. His figure is still, almost part of the landscape. He does not strain his eyes to see. He does not hold himself in tension. He simply stands, aware, present. The darkness does not feel heavy. It does not press in. Instead, it feels open, wide. The land beyond the camp stretches into that darkness, unseen but understood. The guard listens. The wind moves softly. Sometimes it passes through the camp, brushing lightly against fabric and wood. Other times it moves across the open land, carrying distant, almost unnoticeable sounds. A faint rustle, a subtle shift, nothing more. He takes a slow step, then another, not out of need, just to remain awake, to keep his body from becoming too still. Time passes in long, quiet stretches. There is no need to measure it, no need to mark it. The night moves on its own, slowly, naturally. And within it, the guard remains, holding his place in the quiet pattern that repeats each day. Above him, the stars continue their silent movement. They do not change quickly. They do not demand attention, but they are always there, a steady presence in the vastness of the sky. And in that presence, there is something calming, something constant. As the night deepens, then slowly begins to ease, the same gentle shift begins once more, a faint light at the edge of the world. Morning returning, just as it always does. Morning arrives quietly, as if it does not wish to disturb what came before. The darkness softens. The air carries a faint chill. The shapes of the camp begin to return, slowly becoming clear again. The guard notices first, not because he is watching closely, but because the rhythm of it is familiar. Night gives way to light. It always has. It always will. The camp begins to wake, not all at once, not in a single motion, but in small, separate moments. A soldier shifts beneath his blanket. Another opens his eyes and remains still, letting the morning settle around him. Someone sits up and takes a slow breath. There is no rush. There is never a rush. The first movements of the day are gentle. A hand brushing across fabric, a quiet stretch of the arms, the soft sound of feet touching the ground. Each action unfolds without urgency. Nearby, a small fire is started again. The same careful process, the same slow rise of flame, the same thin line of smoke drifting into the morning air. The smell returns, familiar and steady. It marks the beginning of another day. Breakfast is prepared just as it always is, simple, unchanging, and yet it carries a quiet importance. It brings the soldiers together, even if only for a short time. They sit, they eat. Some speak in low voices, others remain silent. Neither feels unusual. Both are part of the same calm routine. After the meal, the camp begins to take on movement once more. Not loud, not fast, but present. A soldier folds his blanket and sets it aside. Another checks his belongings, running his hands over each item as if confirming that everything is still in its place. Tasks begin again, each person moving toward what they know needs to be done. No instructions are needed, no reminders. The rhythm of the days has already taught them. Training resumes in its quiet form, movements repeated, steps taken in steady lines. Nothing intense, nothing demanding, just enough to keep the body familiar with its purpose. Elsewhere, small repairs continue. A piece of wood adjusted, a tool cleaned, a surface smoothed. These tasks are not urgent, but they are constant. And in that constancy, they create a sense of order, a feeling that everything is being maintained, even when nothing is changing. The morning grows into day. The light becomes warmer. The air begins to shift. And once again, the slow rhythm continues.
As the day moves forward, it settles into its familiar middle hours. The sun rises higher, the warmth spreads evenly across the camp, and with it the pace of movement begins to soften. This is a time without urgency, a time where tasks continue, but gently, without pressure, without expectation of completion within a certain moment. A soldier walks along the inner edge of the camp. His steps are steady, measured. He carries nothing in his hands this time. There is no specific task guiding him, just movement, a way of passing time, of staying active without effort. He pauses briefly, looking out toward the open land beyond. Nothing moves there, no figures, no signs of change, just the same quiet distance. He does not linger long. He simply stands for a moment, then turns and continues on. Nearby, another soldier sits cross-legged on the ground. In his hands, he holds a small object, perhaps something he has kept for a long time. He turns it slowly, over and over. The motion is steady, almost thoughtless, but also grounding in its repetition. It gives shape to the passing of time. A few others sit together in a shaded area. They do not speak much. Their presence together is enough. One leans back slightly, closing his eyes for a moment, not fully asleep, just resting, listening to the soft sounds around him, the faint movement of air, the distant step of someone walking, the quiet rustle of fabric. These sounds are small, but they fill the space in a way that feels complete. As midday approaches, the heat becomes more noticeable.
not overwhelming, but present, the kind of warmth that encourages stillness. And so the camp slows again, just as it always does. Work becomes lighter, movements become fewer, voices grow softer. The pattern repeats, not exactly the same, but close enough that it feels familiar, close enough that nothing feels uncertain. And in this steady repetition, soldiers continue to live their lives, not in moments of action, but in long stretches of quiet time, time that moves gently, time that does not ask for more than what is already there, time that in its calm and unchanging way creates a life that is simple, steady, and, in its own quiet sense, peaceful.
The afternoon returns once more, soft and unhurried. There is something familiar in the way the light settles across the camp at this hour. It does not press down or demand attention. It simply rests, touching the same surfaces it has touched many times before. The ground feels warm beneath quiet footsteps. The air moves slowly, carrying just enough motion to remind those within it that time continues to pass. Soldiers move through these hours in the same steady way they always have, not guided by urgency, not pulled forward by anything sudden, just continuing. A man walks along the edge of the camp, his hand brushing lightly against a wooden post as he passes. He does not look at it. He does not need to. The shape, the texture, the exact place where it stands, all of it is already known to him. This place has become familiar in a way that requires no thought. Nearby, another soldier kneels beside a small pile of tools. He picks one up, examines it briefly, then sets it back down. There is nothing wrong with it. Still, the act of checking feels necessary, or perhaps not necessary, but natural, a way to remain engaged with the world around him, a way to let time pass without feeling empty. A few steps away, two soldiers sit side by side in silence. They are not resting out of exhaustion. They are not pausing between tasks. They are simply sitting, looking out at the same quiet stretch of land beyond the camp. Their thoughts move slowly, if at all. There is no pressure to speak, no need to share what is in their minds. The silence between them is not uncomfortable. It is steady, like the ground beneath them. As the afternoon continues, small movements return. A man stands and stretches, his arms reaching upward before falling gently back to his sides. Another gathers a piece of cloth and begins to fold it carefully, smoothing each edge with quiet attention. These actions do not stand out, they do not draw notice, but together they form the texture of the day, a texture made of small, repeated moments. Nothing dramatic, nothing loud, just steady existence. And slowly, almost without anyone noticing, the light begins to shift again. The sun moves lower, the air cools slightly. The long afternoon begins to give way to evening, just as it always does. As the light softens, the camp adjusts in quiet response. There is no signal that marks the change, no voice that announces the arrival of evening. And yet everyone feels it, in the air, in the light, in the slow shift of their own movements. Fires are prepared once more, the same careful gathering of wood, the same gentle arrangement. A spark, then a flame, small at first, then steady. The glow of firelight begins to replace the fading sun, casting soft, moving shadows across the ground. A soldier kneels beside one of the fires, placing a pot above it with practiced ease. His hands move without hesitation. There is no need to think about each step. The routine has already shaped his actions. Around him, others gather, not in a tight circle, but close enough to share the warmth, close enough to feel connected without needing to speak. The smell of cooking returns, familiar,
unchanging. It drifts through the camp, marking this moment just as it has marked so many before. Food is shared quietly, each person receiving what is given, no more, no less. There is no discussion about it, no expectation of change. It is simply part of the rhythm. As they eat, the sky continues to darken. The last light fades slowly, leaving behind only a soft glow along the horizon. Then even that disappears, and the night begins to settle. After the meal, the camp grows quieter. Voices soften, movements slow. A soldier leans back, resting his weight on his hands as he looks upward. The stars are there again, just as they always are. He does not count them. He does not search for patterns. He simply observes, letting his gaze rest on something distant and steady. Nearby, another soldier traces a small line in the dirt with his finger, back and forth, back and forth. The motion is simple, endless, a way to remain present without effort. The fires begin to burn lower. Their light softens. The edges of the camp fade into darkness. One by one, the soldiers begin to rise. Not all at once, not with any urgency, just slowly, each returning to his place of rest. The day comes to an end as it always does, quietly, without resistance.
Night settles fully once again. The camp is still, not empty, not silent in a complete sense, but filled with a quiet that feels whole. Most of the soldiers sleep, their breathing slow, even. The rhythm of rest shared across many individuals who now move together without needing to be aware of it. The fires have mostly faded. Only a few faint glows remain, small points of light that will soon disappear entirely. At the edge of the camp, the watch continues. A single figure stands in the darkness, his presence steady, unmoving for long stretches of time. He looks outward, but not with tension. There is nothing in the distance that suggests change, only the same open land, the same quiet space. He listens. The sounds of night are soft, a faint movement of air, a distant rustle that comes and goes. Nothing sharp, nothing sudden. Time moves slowly here, perhaps more slowly than at any other part of the day. Moments stretch. They do not feel long in a heavy way, but in a quiet, open way, a way that allows thoughts to drift or to disappear entirely. The guard shifts his weight slightly, takes a step, then becomes still again. There is no urgency in his duty, but there is consistency. He remains, he watches, he listens. Above him, the sky is clear, the stars steady. They do not change quickly. They do not demand attention. They simply exist. And in their quiet presence, there is a sense of continuity, a reminder that this moment, like all the others, is part of something larger, something that moves slowly, without interruption, without end. As the night deepens, then begins to soften, the same gentle pattern continues. Darkness giving way to light, stillness giving way to movement, rest giving way to waking, and soon, without announcement, morning will return again, just as it always does.
Morning comes again, as it always has, without effort and without sound. The darkness fades slowly, almost as if it is being gently lifted away. The first light does not rush in. It simply grows, spreading softly across the land, touching the edges of the camp one quiet moment at a time. The guard at the edge of the camp notices it first, though he does not react. He has seen this change so many times that it no longer feels like an event. It is simply part of the order of things. He turns slightly, looking back toward the camp. Shapes begin to form again, familiar outlines, still and calm. The soldiers begin to wake, one by one. There is no sudden motion, no shared moment of rising, just small, separate awakenings. A man shifts beneath his blanket. Another opens his eyes and remains still for a while, letting the morning settle around him. Someone sits up slowly, resting his hands on his knees, breathing in the cool air. The camp does not wake all at once. It unfolds, gradually, gently. A fire is lit again, the same careful process, the same quiet attention. A thin stream of smoke rises into the morning air, drifting slowly before disappearing. The smell is familiar now, a constant presence that marks the beginning of each day. Breakfast is prepared, simple food, unchanged, the same as yesterday, the same as many days before. And as the soldiers gather to eat, there is a quiet sense of continuity. Nothing has shifted, nothing has broken the pattern. They sit together, some speaking softly, others remaining silent. Neither feels unusual. Both are part of the same calm rhythm. After the meal, the camp begins to move again, not quickly, not all at once, but steadily. A soldier folds his blanket and sets it aside. Another lifts a tool and walks to where it is needed. Each person moves toward their task without instruction, without hesitation, because they already know. The routine has settled into them. It guides them without effort. The morning continues in this quiet way, light growing stronger, movement becoming more present, but always soft, always steady. And within it, the soldiers begin another day, just as they have done many times before.
As the morning deepens into the middle of the day, the camp settles once more into its familiar rhythm. The sun rises higher, the light becomes warmer, and with it, the pace of activity begins to soften again. This pattern has repeated so many times that it no longer feels like a pattern, it simply feels like life. A soldier walks slowly across the camp, carrying a small bundle in his hands. There is nothing urgent about his task. Each step is measured, even. He is not trying to arrive quickly. He is simply moving. And in that movement, time passes. Nearby, another soldier sits on a low wooden support, carefully examining a piece of equipment. He turns it slightly, looks at it from one angle, then another. There is no problem to solve, no damage to fix, and yet he continues, because the act itself fills the moment. It gives shape to time. A few soldiers sit together in the shade, their bodies relaxed, their movements minimal. One leans forward slightly, resting his elbows on his knees. Another sits back, his gaze drifting across the open space beyond the camp. They do not speak much. There are long pauses between words. Sometimes there are no words at all. And still they remain together, comfortable in the quiet. Elsewhere, small tasks continue. A piece of cloth is folded and refolded. A tool is cleaned again, though it was already clean. A surface is brushed free of dust that will return later. These actions are not about necessity. They are about continuity, about keeping the flow of the day intact. As the sun reaches its highest point, the warmth becomes more noticeable, not harsh, but present, and with it, the camp begins to slow once more. Movements become fewer, voices soften.
Some soldiers find places to sit or lie down, not fully asleep, just resting, allowing the day to pass around them. The air becomes still, the sounds become quieter, and once again the camp enters that gentle pause that comes each day, a pause that feels neither empty nor full, just steady, just calm.
The afternoon lingers in a soft and unbroken way. Time stretches here more than anywhere else, not in a way that feels long or heavy, but in a way that feels open, wide, unhurried. The soldiers move through it slowly, each action separated by small spaces of stillness. A man stands near the edge of the camp, looking out toward the distance. There is nothing to see that has not been seen before, the same land, the same quiet horizon. And yet he remains there for a moment, not searching, not expecting, just observing. Then, without any clear reason, he turns and walks back. Nearby, another soldier sits with a piece of cloth in his hands. He folds it once, then again, then smooths it carefully. The motion is simple, repeated. There is no need for it to be perfect, only complete. A few others sit together, their bodies relaxed, their movements minimal. One rests his head slightly forward, eyes closed. Another watches the ground, tracing small shapes in the dust with his finger. These are not tasks. They are not duties. They are simply ways of being present in the moment, ways of allowing time to pass without resistance. The air shifts slightly. A breeze moves through the camp. It is light, barely noticeable, but enough to bring a small change. Cloth moves gently. Loose strands of hair shift. Then the air becomes still again. As the afternoon continues, the light begins to soften. The sun moves lower. Shadows stretch across the ground, long and quiet. The camp begins its slow transition once more, not marked by any single action, but felt in the way everything changes just slightly. Soldiers begin to rise from their resting places, not all at once, but gradually. One stands, then another. Movement returns, but gently, softly. The familiar preparation for evening begins again, and once more the day moves toward its quiet close.
Evening returns once again, soft and unannounced. The light lowers gently across the camp, fading from warm gold into something softer, something quieter. Shadows stretch longer now, reaching across the worn ground and resting against the wooden structures that have stood unchanged for many days. No one speaks of the change. No one needs to. It is felt in the air, in the way the body begins to slow, even if it has not been moving quickly, in the way hands begin to finish small tasks rather than begin new ones. A soldier sets down a tool and looks at it for a moment before turning away. There is nothing more to be done with it today. Another brushes dust from his clothing, slow and careful, though the dust will return again tomorrow. These small endings mark the close of the day, quiet endings, almost unnoticed. Fires are prepared again, just as they have been before, the same careful gathering of wood, the same steady arrangement. A spark is struck, and flame rises gently, bringing a soft glow back into the camp as the light of the sun continues to fade. The smell of smoke returns, drifting slowly through the still air. It settles into the space, familiar and calm. A soldier kneels beside one of the fires, placing a pot above it. His hands move with ease, shaped by repetition. He does not rush. There is no reason to. Around him, others begin to gather, not closely, not all at once,
but slowly, one by one, finding their places near the warmth. The closeness brings a quiet sense of comfort. No one speaks loudly. Voices, when they rise, remain soft and low. Food is prepared and shared without ceremony. Each person takes what is given, no more, no less. The act of eating is simple, steady, a continuation of the day's rhythm. As they eat, the sky continues to change. The last light fades. The first stars begin to appear, small points of light, steady and quiet. After the meal, there is time again, time that feels slower now, more settled. A soldier leans back slightly, resting his weight on his hands as he looks upward. His gaze does not search, it simply rests. Nearby, another draws a line in the dirt with a small stick, back and forth, back and forth. The motion repeats without end, without purpose beyond itself. The fires begin to burn lower. Their light softens. The edges of the camp fade into darkness. And slowly, one by one, the soldiers rise and return to their places of rest. The day comes to its quiet close, just as it always does.
Night settles fully over the camp once more. There is no clear moment when it arrives, only the gradual fading of light until darkness holds everything in a soft and even way. The soldiers rest again. Their bodies, shaped by the repetition of many quiet days, move easily into sleep. There is no struggle, no resistance, just a gentle release into stillness. The camp becomes quiet, not silent, but calm. A few faint sounds remain, the shifting of someone settling into place, the soft movement of fabric, the distant crackle of a fire not yet fully gone. These sounds are small, scattered. They do not disturb the quiet. They belong to it. At the edge of the camp, the night watch continues. A soldier stands, his posture relaxed, his breathing slow. He looks out into the darkness, not searching, not expecting, just present. The land beyond the camp stretches into shadow, unseen, unchanged. The guard listens. The wind moves softly. A faint sound comes and goes in the distance. Nothing sharp, nothing sudden. He shifts his weight slightly, takes a slow step, then becomes still again. Time moves differently here. It does not rush. It does not press forward. It simply unfolds, one quiet moment after another. Above him, the stars remain steady, their light soft and distant. They do not change quickly. They do not demand attention. They are simply there, a constant presence in a quiet world. And in that presence there is something grounding, something steady. As the night deepens, then slowly begins to ease, the same gentle pattern continues. Darkness softens, light begins to return, and once again, morning approaches. Without sound, without effort, just as it always has. Morning arrives quietly, as if it has done this so many times that it no longer needs to be noticed. The darkness fades gently. The first light spreads slowly across the ground. The shapes of the camp begin to return, soft at first, then clearer. The guard at the edge of the camp notices the change, though he does not react. He has seen it too many times for it to feel new. It is simply part of the rhythm. He turns slightly, his watch coming to its natural end. Another will take his place, just as it has always been. The soldiers begin to wake, not together, not all at once, but in small, quiet moments. A shift of a blanket, a slow breath, a pair of eyes opening, then closing again before fully rising. The air is cool, fresh,
carrying a stillness that belongs only to this early hour. A fire is started again, the same careful process, the same quiet attention. The thin line of smoke rises once more, marking the beginning of another day. Breakfast is prepared, simple, unchanged, the same steady food that has filled so many mornings before. The soldiers gather. Some speak softly, others remain silent. Both feel natural. Both are part of the same calm rhythm. After the meal, the camp begins to move again, slowly, gently. A soldier folds his blanket, another lifts a tool. Each person moves towards their task without needing direction. The routine has already shaped the day. It guides them without effort. Training resumes in its quiet form, movements repeated, steps taken, nothing intense, nothing demanding, just enough to maintain what is already known. Elsewhere, small tasks continue, a piece of wood adjusted, a tool cleaned, a surface smoothed. These actions are simple, but they create a sense of continuity, a feeling that everything remains in place. As the morning grows into day, the light becomes warmer, the air shifts, and once again the camp settles into its steady, unchanging rhythm. A rhythm that continues, day after day, in the long, quiet space where there is no war.
The day continues without interruption. Morning slowly becomes midday, just as it has many times before. The light grows stronger, then steadier, settling across the camp in a calm and even way. There is no clear line where one part of the day ends and another begins, only a gradual shift, a soft blending. The soldiers move within this shift almost without noticing it. Their actions follow the same quiet patterns. A man walks across the camp, carrying a small object in his hands. He does not hurry. His steps are even, his posture relaxed. He reaches his destination, sets the object down, and pauses for a moment. Not because he is tired, not because he is thinking deeply, but simply because there is no need to move immediately to the next task. Nearby, another soldier sits on the ground, his back resting lightly against a wooden structure. His hands rest loosely in his lap. For a while, he does nothing at all. The stillness is not uncomfortable. It is familiar. It is part of the day. A few others gather in a shaded area, their bodies relaxed, their movements slow. One leans forward slightly, watching the ground. Another looks outward toward the distant horizon, where nothing changes. There is comfort in this lack of change, a steady feeling that the world, at least for now, remains as it is. Small tasks continue. A piece of cloth is folded, then folded again. A tool is wiped clean, though it was already clean before. A length of rope is adjusted, then left in place. These actions are simple, repeated, but they give shape to the passing of time. They prevent the day from feeling empty. They create a quiet sense of continuity. As the sun reaches its highest point, the warmth becomes more noticeable, not overwhelming, but present enough to slow movement further. The camp eases into another gentle pause. Soldiers sit, rest, close their eyes for a short time, not fully asleep, just still. The air grows quiet again, the sounds soften, and the day stretches onward in its slow, steady way.
The afternoon lingers, wide and unhurried. It feels as though time itself has softened. Moments do not stand apart. They blend together, one flowing gently into the next. A soldier walks along the familiar path that circles part of the camp. His steps follow the same route he has taken many times.
He does not think about where he is going. His body already knows. The ground beneath him feels known. Each slight uneven place, each worn section, each turn, all of it is familiar. He reaches a point where the camp opens toward the land beyond. He pauses, looks outward. The horizon remains still. No movement, no sign of change, just quiet space stretching into the distance. After a moment, he turns and walks back. Nothing has changed, and that is enough. Nearby, another soldier sits with a small object in his hands. He turns it slowly, over and over. The motion is steady, unbroken. It does not lead anywhere. It simply continues. A few others sit together, their presence calm and easy. One speaks a few words softly, then stops. The others listen. No one rushes to respond. Silence returns, and it feels natural. As the afternoon moves forward, the light begins to soften again. The sun lowers slowly, without drawing attention. Shadows stretch longer across the ground. The air cools just slightly. Soldiers begin to stir, not suddenly, but gradually. One stands. Another gathers a small item and carries it across the camp. The quiet preparation for evening begins again. The same pattern, the same gentle transition. Nothing unexpected, nothing new. And in that repetition, there is a kind of calm that settles over everything, a quiet understanding that this day, like the others, will come to a soft and steady end. Evening arrives once more, closing the day in the same quiet way it began. The light fades slowly, leaving behind soft shadows that stretch and blend until they disappear into the growing darkness. The camp adjusts without effort. Fires are prepared again. Small flames rise, bringing a gentle glow to the space. The smell of smoke drifts through the air, familiar and unchanged. Soldiers gather near the warmth, not closely, not with urgency, just enough to share the space. Food is prepared and eaten in silence or in soft, scattered words. No one speaks loudly. No one needs to. The rhythm of the day continues to guide everything. After the meal, time slows even further. A soldier leans back, his gaze lifting toward the sky. The stars appear, one by one, steady and quiet. Another sits with his hands resting on his knees, unmoving. A third traces a small shape in the dirt, then lets it fade. The fires burn lower. Their light softens. The edges of the camp begin to disappear into darkness. One by one, the soldiers rise, each returning to his place of rest. No signal is given. No words are spoken. The movement happens naturally, as it always has. They lie down, adjust their blankets, close their eyes. The camp becomes still once more. The sounds fade. The quiet deepens. Night settles gently over everything. And in that quiet, the day disappears without resistance. No mark left behind. No need to remember it, because another day will come, and it will be much the same, slow, steady, unchanging. The soldiers sleep. The stars remain. The land rests. And the long, peaceful stretch between wars continues, moving softly forward, one quiet day at a time, until even the sense of time itself begins to fade into something calm, endless, and still.
The night remains quiet, holding the camp in a soft and steady stillness. Nothing interrupts it. Nothing calls attention to itself. The soldiers rest, their breathing slow and even, rising and falling in a shared rhythm that fills the space without sound. The fires have faded almost completely now. Only faint traces of warmth remain in the ground where they once burned. The air feels cooler, gentler against the skin. There is a sense that everything has settled fully, that nothing more is expected of this moment. At the edge of the camp, a guard still stands. His presence is calm, unmoving for long stretches, then shifting slightly, just enough to remain awake. He looks out into the darkness, though there is little to see. The land beyond remains quiet, unchanged. It stretches outward, unseen but understood. He listens. The night carries soft sounds, a distant movement of air, a faint rustle that comes and goes. These sounds do not disturb the stillness. They belong within it. Time moves slowly here, so slowly that it almost disappears. There is no clear sense of minutes passing, only a gentle awareness that the night continues, and within it the guard remains, a steady part of the pattern. Above him, the stars remain constant. They do not shift quickly. They do not demand attention. They simply exist. And in their quiet presence, there is something deeply calming, a reminder that this moment is part of something larger, something that continues without interruption. As the night deepens, then begins its slow and gentle retreat, the same pattern begins again. Darkness softens, light prepares to return, and morning once more approaches without sound. Morning arrives gently, as it always does. There is no sudden change, only a gradual lifting of darkness, replaced by a soft and steady light that spreads across the land. The shapes of the camp return slowly, first as faint outlines, then with more detail. The guard notices the shift, though he does not react. He has seen it too many times. It is not new. It is simply what comes next. The camp begins to wake, not together, not all at once, but in quiet, separate moments. A soldier stirs. Another opens his eyes and remains still for a while. Someone sits up, resting his hands loosely in front of him. There is no urgency, no need to rise quickly. The air is cool again, fresh, carrying a stillness that belongs only to this early hour. A fire is started once more, the same careful process, the same quiet attention. A small flame rises, followed by a thin line of smoke drifting upward. The smell returns, familiar, steady. Breakfast is prepared, simple food, unchanged, the same as yesterday, the same as many days before. The soldiers gather. Some speak softly, others remain silent. Both feel natural. Both are part of the same calm rhythm. After the meal, movement returns to the camp. Slowly, gently. The soldier folds his blanket and sets it aside. Another lifts a tool and carries it to where it belongs. Each person moves without instruction, without hesitation. The routine guides them. It always has. Training resumes in its quiet form. Movements repeated, steps taken. Nothing intense, nothing demanding, just enough to maintain what is already known. Elsewhere, small tasks continue. A piece of wood adjusted, a tool cleaned, a surface smoothed. These actions are simple, but they give the day its shape. They create a sense of continuity, a feeling that everything remains as it should be. And so, the morning becomes day, slowly, naturally, without resistance.
As the day settles into its middle hours again, everything softens. The light becomes steady. The air warms. Movement slows. The camp enters that familiar space where time stretches gently. A soldier walks across the camp, his steps even and unhurried. He carries nothing. There is no specific task in his hands, only movement, a quiet way to pass time. He pauses briefly, looking out toward the open land beyond. Nothing moves there, no change, no sign of anything new, just the same quiet distance. He stands for a moment, then turns and continues on. Nearby, another soldier sits with a small object in his hands. He turns it slowly, over and over. The motion is steady, repetitive, grounding. A few others sit together in a shaded space. They do not speak much. Their presence is enough. One leans back slightly, closing his eyes. Another watches the ground, tracing a faint line in the dust with his finger. The air is still. The sounds are soft. Everything feels settled, complete. As midday approaches, the warmth grows more noticeable. Not overwhelming, but enough to slow movement further. The camp eases into another quiet pause. Soldiers rest, sit, lie down. Let the day pass around them. Time continues, not quickly, not slowly, but steadily, one moment following another without interruption. And within that steady flow, life continues in its simplest form, unchanged, unhurried, calm.
The afternoon stretches quietly across the camp, as if time itself has decided to move more gently here than anywhere else. The sun hangs above, no longer climbing, not yet falling in any noticeable way. Its light feels steady, settled, resting across the ground like a soft layer that does not shift too quickly. The soldiers move within this stillness with an ease that has grown over many days. Nothing feels new. Nothing feels uncertain. Each step, each small action carries the quiet familiarity of repetition. A soldier walks slowly along the inner edge of the camp. His path is not chosen in the moment. It is a path his body already knows. The ground beneath him has been worn down by many footsteps, some of them his own. He does not need to look down to see where he is going. His feet move with quiet certainty. There is no destination that matters, only the act of walking. And in that walking, time passes. He pauses near a wooden post, resting his hand lightly against it. The surface is rough in some places, smooth in others, shaped by time and use. His fingers move slightly across it, not exploring, not searching, just feeling what is already known. Then, without thought, he moves on. Nearby, another soldier sits on a low crate, a small piece of cloth in his hands. He folds it once, carefully aligning the edges. Then again. Then he smooths it with the palm of his hand. The motion is slow, repeated. There is no need for the cloth to be perfect, but the act of folding, of smoothing, of repeating fills the moment in a quiet and steady way. It gives shape to time. A few steps away, two soldiers sit side by side in the shade of a simple structure. Their shoulders are relaxed, their posture easy. They do not speak, not because they have nothing to say, but because there is no need to say anything at all. Their silence is shared, comfortable, like the air around them. One of them shifts slightly, adjusting his position. The other glances toward the horizon, his eyes unfocused, not searching for anything in particular. The land beyond the camp remains unchanged, wide, still, a quiet stretch of earth that offers no movement, no sign of interruption, and that stillness is enough. As the afternoon continues, a faint breeze moves through the camp. It is light,
barely noticeable at first, then slightly more present. It brushes against fabric, causing it to shift gently. It passes through loose strands of hair. It touches the skin just enough to remind the body that the air is alive, even in its calm. A soldier standing near a stack of supplies lifts his head slightly as the breeze passes, not in reaction, just in quiet awareness. Then he returns to stillness. Elsewhere, a small group of soldiers works slowly on a simple task. A wooden beam is being adjusted, lifted slightly, shifted, set back into place. The movement is careful, but not strained. There is no urgency behind it, only the steady continuation of something that has likely been done before and will be done again. The sound of wood against wood is soft, muted. It does not carry far. It blends into the quiet background of the camp. A soldier nearby cleans a tool. He runs a piece of cloth along its surface again and again. The same motion, the same pressure, the same slow rhythm. It does not need to be cleaned so many times, but the repetition is part of the act, part of the way the moment is filled. As the sun begins its slow descent, the light shifts in a way that is almost too gradual to notice. Shadows lengthen slightly, edges soften. The brightness of the day begins to fade into something more gentle. Soldiers begin to stir again, not all at once, not with any clear signal, but gradually. One stands, another stretches, a third gathers a small item and carries it across the camp. The transition toward evening has begun, quietly, without interruption, without effort, and the day continues to move forward just as it always has.
The shift into evening comes softly, like a breath that has been slowly released. The light lowers across the camp, touching the tops of structures before fading gently down their sides. Shadows stretch long across the ground, thin and quiet, until they begin to blend into one another. There is no clear moment when afternoon becomes evening, only a feeling, a subtle change that moves through the air and settles into the body. The soldiers respond to it without needing to think. Their movements adjust. Tasks that were once continued now begin to come to a natural end. A soldier sets down a tool and pauses, looking at it for a moment, not because he is unsure of what to do next, but because there is nothing more to be done with it for now. He brushes his hands together, removing a thin layer of dust. Then he turns away. Nearby, another soldier lifts a piece of cloth and folds it slowly. The motion is familiar, repeated. He smooths it once more before setting it aside. There is no need to rush. The day is already moving toward its close. Fires begin to appear again, small at first, a spark, then a faint flame, then something steady. The glow spreads softly, replacing the fading light of the sun with something warmer, closer, more contained. The smell of smoke returns, drifting gently through the camp. It mixes with the cooling air, creating a scent that has become part of every evening. A soldier kneels beside one of the fires, adjusting the position of a pot. His hands move slowly, guided by repetition. He does not need to think about each step. The process is already known. Others gather nearby, not in a tight group, but close enough to share the warmth, close enough to feel the quiet presence of one another. Food is prepared, simple, unchanged. It is shared without ceremony. Each person receives what is given, no more, no less. As they eat, the sky continues to shift. The last light fades, the horizon softens, and above, the first stars begin to appear, small points of light, steady
and distant. A soldier lifts his gaze toward them. He does not count them. He does not follow their patterns. He simply looks. And in that looking, there is a quiet sense of stillness. After the meal, time slows further. The camp becomes quieter. Voices soften, then fade. A soldier leans back, resting his weight on his hands. Another sits with his hands in his lap, unmoving. A third traces a small shape in the dirt, then lets it fade as his hand passes over it again. The fires burn lower. Their light softens. The edges of the camp begin to disappear into the growing darkness. One by one, the soldiers rise, each returning to his place of rest. There is no signal, no shared moment, just a gradual movement, a quiet return. The day closes gently, without resistance.
Night settles once more, deep and steady. The camp becomes still in a way that feels complete. Not empty, not silent in an absolute sense, but filled with a quiet that holds everything in place. The soldiers sleep, their breathing slow and even, a shared rhythm that moves through the space without sound. The fires have faded, only faint traces remain, small points of warmth that will soon disappear entirely. The air is cool again, soft against the skin. At the edge of the camp, the watch continues. A soldier stands, his posture relaxed. He does not hold tension in his body. He does not strain to see into the darkness. He simply stands, present, aware. The land beyond the camp stretches outward, unseen. There is no movement, no sign of change, only space, wide and quiet. He listens. The night carries soft sounds, a faint breeze moving through distant trees, a subtle rustle that comes and goes. These sounds are gentle. They do not disturb the stillness. They belong to it. Time passes slowly, so slowly that it almost feels as though it is not passing at all. Moments blend together, one into the next. The guard shifts his weight slightly, takes a step, then becomes still again. Above him, the stars remain steady, their light soft and distant. They do not change quickly. They do not demand attention. They simply exist, and in their presence there is a quiet sense of continuity, a reminder that this moment is part of something larger, something that continues without interruption. As the night deepens, then slowly begins to ease, the same gentle pattern returns. Darkness softens, light prepares to come back, morning approaches once more, without sound, without urgency, just as it always has.
Morning begins again in the softest possible way. There is no clear moment when it arrives. The darkness simply becomes lighter. The air shifts from cool night stillness into something gently fresh, as if the world has taken a slow breath and released it. The guard at the edge of the camp notices it first, though his reaction is almost unnoticeable. His posture remains the same. His gaze remains steady. But something in the way he stands becomes slightly more relaxed, as if his watch is naturally reaching its end. Behind him, the camp rests in that quiet space between sleep and waking. The shapes of tents and wooden structures slowly return, not all at once, but piece by piece. A line becomes visible, then a surface, then a full form. The soldiers begin to stir. One shifts beneath his blanket, turning slightly as if adjusting to the change in light. Another opens his eyes, but does not move, allowing the morning to settle around him before rising. A third sits up slowly, placing his hands on his knees, his head slightly bowed as he takes a steady breath. There is no rush. There never is.
The first moments of the day belong to stillness. A small fire is started again, the same quiet process, wood placed carefully, a spark, a faint flame, then something steady. Smoke rises in a thin, gentle line, drifting into the cool morning air before fading. The smell returns, familiar, comforting in its repetition. It does not stand out anymore. It simply belongs. The soldiers begin their morning tasks without instruction. A man folds his blanket, smoothing it carefully before setting it aside. Another brushes dust from his clothing with slow, practiced movements. Someone checks a piece of equipment, running his fingers along its surface, not searching for flaws, but confirming its presence. These actions are simple, but they mark the beginning of the day. Breakfast is prepared, the same foods, the same portions. Nothing changes, and nothing needs to. The soldiers gather near the small fires, sitting or standing in quiet groups. Some speak softly, others remain silent. The silence is not empty, it is shared, a steady presence between them. As they eat, the light continues to grow. The sky becomes clearer, the camp becomes more defined, edges sharpen, details return. After the meal, movement spreads gently across the space. A soldier lifts a tool and walks toward a familiar task. Another carries a small bundle across the camp, his steps even and unhurried. Training begins for a few, not intense, not driven by urgency, just steady repetition. A shield lifted, a step taken, a movement repeated again and again. The rhythm is slow, almost quiet enough to disappear into the background. Elsewhere, small repairs continue, a wooden beam adjusted, a loose tie secured, a surface brushed free of dust. These tasks do not demand attention, but they fill the day in a way that feels complete. As the sun rises higher, the warmth begins to settle in. The morning becomes day, and once again, the camp moves forward in its steady, unchanging rhythm.
The middle of the day arrives gently, without any clear boundary to separate it from the morning. The light becomes steady and full, resting evenly across the camp. The warmth grows, not suddenly, but in a slow and quiet way that the body notices without thinking. Movement begins to soften, not because anyone decides to slow down, but because the day itself seems to invite it. A soldier walks along a familiar path, his steps light and even. He carries nothing. There is no task in his hands at this moment, only the quiet act of moving from one place to another. He pauses near the edge of the camp, looking outward. The land beyond remains still, wide, open, unchanged. He does not linger long, just a moment. Then he turns and continues walking. Nearby, another soldier sits in the shade, his back resting lightly against a wooden post. His hands are in his lap, fingers loosely intertwined. For a while, he does nothing, and in that stillness there is no discomfort, only calm. A few others sit together nearby. Their presence is quiet, comfortable. One speaks a few words, softly, then stops. The others listen. No one rushes to respond. Silence returns naturally, like something that was always meant to be there. A soldier lying on the ground closes his eyes for a short time, not fully asleep, just resting. The warmth of the day encourages stillness, encourages pause. Elsewhere, small tasks continue. A piece of cloth is folded, then folded again. A tool is cleaned slowly, though it was already clean. A length of rope is adjusted, then left in place. These actions are not urgent. They are not even necessary in the strictest sense, but they give structure to time. They create a gentle flow. As the sun reaches its highest point, the air becomes more still. The breeze fades. The sounds of movement grow quieter. The camp enters its most peaceful moment of the day, a shared pause, not planned, not announced,
but felt. Soldiers sit, lie down, lean against structures, each finding a small space to rest within. Time stretches here, not in a heavy way, but in a wide, open way. Moments feel longer, softer, less defined. And within those moments, there is nothing to interrupt the calm, nothing to disturb the quiet, just the steady presence of the day. The afternoon slowly begins to shift, though the change is so gradual it is almost impossible to notice at first. The light softens just slightly, the warmth eases, the air begins to move again, carrying a faint breeze through the camp. Soldiers begin to stir, not all at once, not suddenly, but gently. A man sitting in the shade opens his eyes and stretches his arms slowly above his head before letting them fall back to his sides. Another rises from where he had been resting, brushing dust from his clothing with slow, deliberate movements. The pause of midday begins to fade. Movement returns, but softly. A soldier walks toward a small task he had left unfinished earlier. He picks up a tool, examines it briefly, then continues his work. The action is calm, unforced. Nearby, two soldiers walk side by side. They do not speak. Their steps are in no particular rhythm, yet they move together easily. The ground beneath them feels familiar. Each step falls naturally into place. A few others gather near a shaded structure, sitting close but not crowded. One leans back against a post. Another rests his arms on his knees. Their presence is quiet, shared, comfortable. As the afternoon continues, the light changes more noticeably. Shadows grow longer, stretching across the ground in thin, quiet lines. The edges of the camp soften. The brightness of the day begins to fade into something more gentle. A soldier pauses, looking down at the ground, not searching, not thinking, just observing the way the light falls across the surface. Then he moves on. These small moments pass without marking themselves. They do not stand out, but together they form the shape of the day, a shape made of repetition, of stillness, of quiet movement. As the sun lowers further, the air cools slightly. The breeze becomes more present, not strong, just enough to shift the feeling of the space. Soldiers begin to prepare, without thinking, for what comes next. Evening. The same as before, the same as always. And as the day moves toward its quiet close, everything continues in that same steady rhythm, unbroken, unhurried, calm.
And so the days continue, not counted, not marked in any lasting way. They pass quietly, one into another, like gentle waves that never rise high enough to be noticed from afar. Morning becomes day, day becomes evening, evening fades into night. And then, without effort, it begins again. The soldiers live within this rhythm without needing to understand it. They wake when the light returns, they move through small tasks that ask little of them, they rest when the warmth of the day grows soft and still. They gather near quiet fires as the light fades, and they sleep when the night settles gently over everything. Nothing stands out, nothing breaks the pattern, and yet, within that pattern, something steady continues. A life made not of great moments, but of small ones. A hand brushing dust from worn fabric, a quiet step along a familiar path, the soft sound of a tool being set down at the end of the day. These things do not become stories. They are not remembered in detail, but they are lived, fully and quietly, again and again. The camp itself begins to feel less like a place of duty and more like something settled, something known. The wooden posts, the worn ground, the simple fires, they do not change much, and because of that, they offer a kind of quiet comfort. Even the silence becomes familiar,
not empty, but full in its own gentle way. The soldiers do not speak often of what may come next. They do not spend their time looking far ahead, because here, in this long space between wars, there is nothing pressing forward, no sudden demand, no urgent call, only the steady unfolding of each day as it arrives. And so they remain, moving slowly, living simply, letting time pass without resistance. Above them, the sky continues its quiet cycle. The sun rises and falls, the stars appear and fade, clouds drift when they come and leave when they go. Nothing stays, but nothing is lost either. Everything simply changes, slowly, gently, without drawing attention to itself. The land beyond the camp remains still, wide and open, unchanged in any way that matters to those who sit and watch it. It offers no answers, but it asks no questions either. And that, in its own way, is enough. As night settles one last time over the quiet camp, the fires burn low. Their glow softens, then fades. The soldiers return to rest, each one moving through the same familiar motions, a blanket adjusted, a body settling into place, eyes closing without effort. The sounds of the day disappear one by one, until only stillness remains. And in that stillness there is no need for anything more, no need for an ending that stands apart, because nothing truly ends here. It only continues, softly, slowly, unnoticed, like the quiet breath of the night, like the steady passing of time. And somewhere in that calm and endless rhythm, the world rests and remains just as it is.